So, hello everybody. Really very happy and very nervous and um, very honored to be here and be part of this year as a speaker, not as a competitor. Nordic Roaster has had a huge impact in my coffee career or business or whatever. It has changed the way I'm thinking about how to roast coffee. Starting a company with two great guys, give me the opportunity to work with, Andreas and Morten, and being part of this competition, the Nordic Roaster Forum and the Nordic competition. I learned a lot and changed the whole philosophy of the way I'm thinking. So today I'm going to talk mostly about the preparation I do before the nationals, the national competitions, and the World Coffee Roasting Championships. And I'm going to talk about the whole chain in the production, from the green bean evaluation, techniques for some of you who might compete in the national or international championships. And I'm going to, as you probably know, I do a lot of training before the competitions, and this year I'm going to present some experiments I've been doing the last week, and it's about modulating certain technical values on the roasting process, such as the drum speed and the airflow, and we're going to do a cupping at the end of the day. I'm going to see the results, and I hope that this will give some useful results for anyone who's interested. I had already a cupping with Alex the last week, and we saw already some great findings, and as well as the technical findings are very obvious. So I hope that will help you guys. And as this forum had a huge impact in my coffee life. I've been roasting for 16 years at Solberg & Hansen, and this has a huge impact in the way I'm thinking and roasting, and I hope this presentation will have some good impact, mostly to the younger roasters. I think a roaster like Tim Vanderbo, they don't need my advices, but I hope this will motivate some new roasters to come into the coffee world. So talking about competitions, right now, like worldwide, there are these two competitions which are the most famous, the most organized, the competition that they give you the possibility as a roaster to grow and learn. They have some great similarities. The Roasting Championship and the Nordic Roaster, they're both aiming to deliver the best cup of coffee. They are for the spreading knowledge, and they have a huge impact in the roast evolution, and you have the chance to calibrate your own roasting style with other colleagues or other roasteries. It's a huge learning platform. They have some differences, and they might be quite big. The Nordic roast is like a teamwork competition, where your roasting team work together from the sourcing or the analyzing the beans and doing a job together as a team to build up the team and present a great product for the company they work for. They have some time limitation differences. In the World Championships, you have a specific time in order to evaluate the greens, to do the cupping, to do the sample roasting, to perform the production. The cupping process is totally different. We do the cupping here. The cupping is performed by the attendees. At the World Championship, it's performed by the judges, certified judges, which might be good and sometimes really bad. The attendance, of course, there are some limitations. It's up to 60, I think, attendees at the Nordic and 10 roasteries, while at World Championship or at the national championships, it's open to everyone. So how all these things started? The World Championships are organized by the WCE, which is established or founded by SCAE and SCAA. And you have the respective SCAE branches in each country who organize the national championships. So the national championships will participate at the Worlds. In my case, as Eric said, I was very happy to be invited at the first World Roasting Challenge in Vienna, and this is something I believe that at that time the Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, were a step forward from the rest of the world when it comes to roasting, because at that time we had also already implemented the technology like login systems, color reading devices, which even right now not many roasteries are using them. And I personally believe, I have a technical background and I really believe in technology and using the technical means in order to really detect how things works, evaluate the roast profiles. So at that time, I think also some years after, we had already a Norwegian World Coffee Roasting Champion. And I believe that the reason for that was that we were ahead of the world at that time as Nordic countries. Right now, the knowledge is spreading very fast worldwide, and the technology is the same everywhere, is getting harder and harder. I was very amazed by this competition, and I thought this is a great opportunity to come back to Norway and try to involve and get involved into the roasting community. And I was very interested to arrange the first roasting championship, and I'm very proud of it because of the results I see today. We have 27 competitors who try to win and represent the country at the World Championship. So this competition for me is like it's idealized production routine because it includes the whole chain of the production, from the green bean evaluation, the sample roasting, the cupping. You need to plan and you need to evaluate values such as color development, end temperatures, weight loss, taste profile, and you need to really present it to the judges. Many of us, due to the hectic work days and for some others due to economical means, we don't have the chance to attend forums like this one or doing Q-graded courses or whatever because it costs money. This competition is a great opportunity for many roasters to participate, and they can, through this competition and through other coffee roasters, to develop themselves as a coffee roasters. So for me, it's like a great possibility to kind of not using too much money. You have a great possibility to learn a lot regarding the whole chain of the production. I have been roasting on these machines only in the roasting championships, and I think I've been talking to many roasters today, and many of them, they haven't been roasting to more than one or maybe two roasters, or using one or even not one sample roasting machine. For me, it was a huge, and it's a pleasure to talk with fellow roasters and talk how the way you roast, it will affect the final roast profile, taste profile, if you do it on a Didrish or you do it on a Gießen or Probat or Loring. And because we know that the convection ratio between the roaster is totally different. If you roast, depending on the manufacturer or depending on the, if you have a Loring which using only convection or other machines that have a higher ratio of conduction, this will definitely affect the final taste of the coffee. And this one we're going to taste also later on today when we're going to present the experiment I was doing the last week manipulating or modifying the drum speed and the airflow. What I personally do, and this is a kind of advice to the future competitors, is that the first thing I do is I don't roast on a daily basis to all these different roasting machines. I want the street championships roasting on 3 different machines I never roasted before. But it's very important to really understand how the machine works, which are the limitations and the possibilities you get from these roasters, and conduction, convection ratios, and try to find out from the manufacturer the specs of the machine, and also try to figure out by asking fellow competitors or friends about critical points of the roasting profile, such as what is normal for you to drop the coffee when it's turning around, when does it cracks, what's the higher peak rate of rise you get in this profile. And these things I'll keep for myself in order to program or create a roasting profile. Just a few things about sample roasters, which are part of the competition, sample roasting. Not this one, but nowadays sample roasting machines are more sophisticated, close to the modern coffee roasters, with abilities to a modern coffee roaster, and some of them may be even better. But for me, the purpose of the sample roasting is not to find the right profile, the roasting profile, but to find as closest as possible the taste profile of the coffee. And it's also very important in a competition to the sample roasting, because it's the first contact you have with the coffee after the green bean evaluation. This is the first contact you have with the coffee in the roasting process. So you'll find hidden things about the coffee, how it will react to the heat, how fast it will go through the drying period, and how hard it will crack or slow, stuff like that. And in a competition, due to the time limitation, you have, I think it's 45 minutes to perform 4 sample roasts. It's very important to, since you don't have a second chance, it's really important to rather go a little bit darker on the color or in development, instead of risking to go too light, which will give you actually not any information about the coffee. It will taste underdeveloped. It's a great possibility to learn to roast in different sample roasting machines. The first thing in the competition, it's about evaluating the green coffee. As I mentioned earlier, in a daily life in the roastery, we don't have always the time to go through the chain, like evaluating the coffee beans, looking at the defects, measuring all this really important data, which will help you in order to create your roasting profile. So the color, aroma, and odor of the coffee will give you some sense of how fresh the coffee is, because in the competition you don't know what you roast. You just get the coffee, you have to analyze it, and about the taste quality of it it's a sponsored coffee, so you never know what to expect. So you need to analyze the color, aroma, and odor of the coffee. You have to go through the bean size, technical attributes of the coffee, which personally I'm very interested at. Different moisture contents will need to have different approach during the roast profile, as well as we have our perceptions of how a Colombian coffee will taste, a Brazilian or a Kenyan coffee, for instance, will taste. And this perception doesn't have to be justified, because sometimes you get coffee that really tastes totally different from what you're expecting. So it's really important to analyze the coffee, to get all these technical details that will help us to create a roasting profile. And the next step which is the most crucial, I think, is that you need to find out if your perception of this certain coffee from this certain origin is the one that you're waiting for, or something different. So based on that, if you don't get the acidity or the taste profile that you are expecting for this certain coffee, you need to have a different roasting approach. I find the sample roasting the sample roasting and the cupping is a very difficult procedure in this competition. For many reasons. One of the reasons is that you really need to make to take a really good decision at that point, what kind of profile you need to follow, because usually when you roast for coffee that is related to your local market, which is the Nordic market or the Norwegian market, where we are mostly calibrated and we have certain expectation about the taste quality. When you are in the World Roasting Championship, where of course the judges are calibrated, but there are some inconsistencies, I believe, for what is preferable to certain countries. So it's very important to take a decision. Like I was doing a kind of mistake the last 2 years. I was believing that I'm going to represent the Nordic roasting style in these competitions, and because this is what I'm used to actually do every day, and I believe in. But the aim in this competition is to win actually and accumulate the highest score. So you need to really take some good decisions that will give you the highest score. Really, you need to take some hard decisions, when you do the sample roasting and the cupping. After we have done the green bean evaluation and keeping in mind all these details about the technical details of the coffee and as well as the taste attributes of it after the sample roasting and the cupping and the decision that we have already made in order to achieve a high score and the certain taste attributes which will give you a higher score, we need to design a roast profile. And I was thinking, what roast profile is. And I think this is the best way I can describe what the roast profile is for me. Is a technical approach is a technical approach of heat application, taking in consideration the type of the roaster, if it's a full conduction, the ratio of conduction convection, taking in consideration the type of the beans and the taste attributes in order to reach a certain development of the coffee that will reveal the taste that we will expect for. This is what I really believe in, and this will, after a couple of slides, we're going to see that the reason why I believe this one. So behind this statement, there are hidden these 3 main pillars that I believe will represent a roast profile. When we do perform a roast, we are looking for a color degree. We are aiming to a certain color degree, which is related directly to the taste profile of the coffee. The roasting length will manipulate to a certain level the intensity of the coffee. And the heat application will be measured by the rate of rise at some critical points of the roast profile. At the same time, so this is my main pillars, the core pillars when I design a roasting profile. The color degree, which we are aiming at. A certain coffee, we know that this is a certain range of color development that it's represents the highest quality. The roasting length, which will apply to how the intensity, how high or low the intensity of the coffee is, and the rate of rise is related to the heat application on the profile. Some other things to measure and to design into the final product and final roast profile is that predicting the weight loss of the coffee, for example. And I know many people use it as a color, as a quality control routine. Personally, I wouldn't do that because the weight loss is directly not related only to the color development or in total the development of the coffee, but it's mostly related to the moisture content of the coffee and how hard or low you go to the drying phase. And if you really believe that if you have the same weight loss, every time you have the same development of the coffee, that I believe it's wrong. So it's okay to use it as it's not okay for me to use it as a quality measure system, but you have to predict it, and the way you predict it is actually mostly based on experience. and how it's impossible to have a formula about it. It's experience, and it's, how hard you go through the development, the drying phase, and how high or low the moisture content is. Another value that you have to predict when you are in this competition is the end temperature. And this one is very tricky, because especially if you don't know a roaster, how could you predict, when it will end? And this will, I'm going to reveal something that I've been thinking about it for years, and it's a formula that I think has a solution about it. And I hope you really find it very useful. Oops, sorry. Sorry. I made a statement what I believe is the roasting profile earlier today, and it was like this three main pillars, which is the color development, or the final roast degree of the coffee, is the time you use in order to roast this coffee, and the rate of rise or heat application at a certain crucial points of the roasting profile. So in order for me to, this became like, I wanted to find out, I have correlated the development time, the length of the development time, based on a certain average rate of rise is when you start the crack and you end the roast, in order to reach a certain color development. And I combine all these things together just to give me these 12 points I need to get a higher score in the competition. But actually, this little formula that gives you only end temperature combines what I really believe about the main pillars of the roasting profile. So the end of roast temperature is equal to, you need to really understand, and you really need to do the training to understand when the coffee is going to crack at this certain roasting machine. So you need to know to learn this roaster. Plus the average rate of rise, the rate of rise that you start the point that the coffee is cracking and the time you pull the coffee out of the drum, multiplied by the development time and divide by 60 if your rate of rise is measured in 60 seconds, or divide by 30 if it's measured by 30 seconds. This formula never let me down. I always got 12 points in the championship. But what's most important, I think, is that it's correlating what I really believe in the roasting profile. It's correlating the time, the roasting value, and the average rate of rise, which is the heat application of the roast. I hope you find this one helpful. This is a typical example of the rate of rise, where I'm performing a roast with the same profile to the first crack, and after that I'm doing a modification of the color development. This is just one simple technique that's keeping the same development time or development time ratio, applying different values of the rate of rise. This one will give you definitely, even though we have the same roast length, we apply different heat application, different rate of rise value. This one will give you totally different taste perception, different taste attributes, and different color development of the coffee. So putting another variable, which is the roasting length. In this case, we have three different three different approaches with different rate of rise values at the first crack point, different development time levels, different first crack rate of rise. This might give us the same development of the coffee, the same color, but totally different taste attributes. So, what to choose in a competition? You have, you have certain attributes from the taste you get in the sample roasting. You have the technical attributes of the coffee. You have the roaster that you are not familiar to. So for me, the most important is the origin of the coffee, to try to find out what kind of taste attributes you want to reveal, and the technical attributes like the density, the moisture, all these things that will really help you to really find out the right profile that will give you the right development correlated to the right test profile. Very short, just a comment about the development time ratio. I personally don't use it as an important information during the roasting because this is directly correlated to what kind of rate of rise do you apply during this part of the roast. So even though you have the same development time ratio in this case, different rate of rise values. This is just created by Photoshop, so it's not a real profile. But I wanted to highlight the differences of the rate of rise, the average rate of rise, and how it affects the taste. This will give you totally different taste profile. So DTR in percent means nothing to me. What I believe about the roasting profiles and how we learn to roast on different roasters and participating in these championships, roasting the different machines that we are not familiar with. This is a typical, not a typical, but this is the same coffee roasted on a Loring Smart Roast, 20 kilos, and 120 kilos of the same coffee roasted on a ProBat. They look quite different because they are different. Because all the roasters, they have they work in a different way. The drying phase is different. The Maillard may appear different. But what I believe, and this is something that I use always in the competitions, is that the majority of the roasters, they tend to have the same pattern. They tend to have the same behavior when we are closer to the final phase of the roast. So if you stick to certain values, like if I have a Kenya, I have to have this certain rate of rise value during the first crack. I need to apply certain hits to hit that. Otherwise, it will get too dark or too bitter or too caramelized. Or if I go lower than that, it will appear flatter or underdeveloped. So personally, I believe that keeping in mind this approach and believing that most of the roasting machines, they tend to have the same attributes and they tend to have the same behavior at the end of the roast. I use this one as an advantage in order to create profiles that I will keep the same philosophy kind of at the end, at the last stage of the roast, in order to get the result that I want. I cannot change the turn point because you have these limitations. When you roast 120 kilos, for sure, your drop temperature, or for instance, if you roast 20, the drop temperature must be much different. And if you want to extend this one, you need to find out what kind of shape your rate of rise will have. Other people have had statements about this and have better thoughts about this. So you define your own roasting profile, how you go through this, the Maillard phase or the drying phase, which heat application you use and which kind of rate of rise curve you use on the way to the first crack. But the most important for me is that what happens just before the first crack and to the end of the roast. And I believe it's almost the same to most of the roasters that we know, roasting machines that we know. So this is just another profile which represents same coffee and different approach. As for example, let's say that the bean size in this case, we have the same coffee, but we have a certain perception how it will taste, but the bean size it's different. We have 3 different coffees from, let's say, from a certain region, and the bean size is different. If we believe that just because this coffee is a Kenya or a Colombian, I know that I have to roast it in a certain length or a certain color degree, it will give me the desired result. It might be wrong because you need to evaluate the bean size of the coffee. It needs a really different heat application in order to develop it to the core. to a certain level that we want. So modifying the rate of rise values at the first crack, it's a thought when you have differentiation in the beans size. This is a method not related to the championships, but this is a method that I use. For example, if I have, I'm certain about the color development of the coffee, that I want to reach a certain level, and I want to cover a wider range of the roasting time. One of my favorite methods in order to define the best roasting approach for a certain kind of coffee, in the case that I'm very secure and sure about the type of the roast, the type of the roast profile. It's modifying the development time of the coffee, just keeping the same rate of rise values, the same profile, just modifying the length of the development time, which will lead us to the just slightly differences in the development time, 0.50, 110, and 113. The duration, 929, 1327. It will give a quite big difference in the cupping score, as you can see, but also in the color development of the coffee. So, finalizing my presentation, this is the main things that will affect and will help me or help us in order to create the right and take the right decision in order to create a good roast profile in a championship or otherwise in the day life in the roastery. It's really important to me, the technical attributes of the coffee, like checking out the density, the humidity, the bean size of the coffee, the origin, the taste expectations of the coffee, like doing the sample roasting and trying to find out which are the taste properties of the coffee, but also its peculiarities. Sometimes we can expect certain taste attributes, but they can be totally different from what we expect. Another thing to think about is that how do you deal with if you have a washed or naturals, if you have a honey or whatever, anaerobics, different processes. And if you want to do a blend, for instance, many of us, we are not used to do blends in our roasteries. How do we deal about that? What do we think in order to create a blend of one natural and two washed coffees? What strategies do we use that? And if you do the pre-blend or post-blend. So all these things are very important to know that if you, for instance, do the pre-blended coffees, you have to take in consideration, the different bean size or the moisture content, and if this can be roasted together at the same level that you want to be roasted. The bean size, it's really important to relate it to what kind of values you want to get on the rate of rise when the coffee is cracked. Because if you have a bean that you go with a low rate of rise, you're going to get a certain percentage of that batch which will be well developed. Let's say big size beans or medium size bean, if you go with a lower rate of rise heat application at the first crack, you might get maybe the 50% or 60% of the bean well developed, while the rest is going to be like halfway. So it's going to be very inconsistent. You might get some underdeveloped tastes. This is in order to when I do my preparation, the competition, I try, as I said, to understand how this roasting machine works, and go through the technical specification of the roaster, and then I do certain experiments for certain origins, these experiments, I choose to roast the Kenya Gatugi, which I got from Solberg Hansen, and it's a final score of 86. So what I was trying to do, I've seen this one, many people, especially the ones that have roasters with drum speed modification and airflow modifications, they talk a lot about it, and I've tasted different coffees that I've seen huge differences. And my goal was actually to both help myself, taking your feedback and looking at what results we're going to get after this experiment, but also I think it's going to help a lot of roasters, both here but otherwise, everywhere, who are really interested to see the impact of this kind of modifications. So I used 3 different variations of the drum speed from those who roast on a GS, and they might know these values, which is 40, 45, and 50 hertz per minute. And the Pascal, I use the airflow of 90, 120, and 150 Pascals, the airflow. And we're going to see after a while, after we do the cupping, we're going to see the final results. I think Kaya is going to talk about it, how she created this cupping form and what kind of attributes we're going to test. I'm very interested to see, of course, the overall score. It's the most important, but very interested to see the sweetness and the balance of the coffee and the flavor. And those are included in that cupping form. So I have to, what I basically did, and to be honest, it was not easy, because when I was roasting 3 kilos of coffee on a 6 kilos W68 GSM, which is the roast that is provided at the World Championships, I need to thank you, Mikkel Dynisfeld, or Mikkel Kaffeverksted, for allowing me to use the roaster. And really, I want to thank you, Cropster, that they have been always supporting me all these years. I love this product, and I really, support it every day. It's from the day we started with Morten creating our own logging system at Solberg Hansen. I just love this product. It's an amazing tool for roasters. So this is the drum speed modification I did at the top, and the airflow modification, as I mentioned earlier. And it was very, very hard because it's not my roaster. I'm not very familiar to it. I did my best in order to, these are actually the profiles that I did. I did my best in order to keep in track and keep creating a reference profile, which is the baseline, and try modifying the drum and the airflow, trying to keep in track and try to control in order to create the same exactly profile. This is not exactly the same, but it's the best I could do at exactly the same roasting time, trying to find out the final results, the technical attributes, what color we get, how much weight loss we get, what happens during the first crack, and later today we're going to see how this is going to affect also the taste profile. Those 4 curves, it is actually the reference curve that I try to follow, to hit. And this is the easiest one because you have a low drum speed and, and these 3 variations of the airflow, which is actually easy to control. As you can see, the profiles are quite the same. The faster we go with the profile, the more difficult it gets. So when we increase the drum speed, the condition inside the drum, the roaster immediately is different. So I had kind of problems in order to keep in track to the baseline. But at the end of the roast, as I was talking earlier, things seems to be quite the same. And I managed to make these profiles, and we'll see about how the taste later on today. And the most difficult one was exactly when we have very high drum speeds. the thermodynamical conditions in the drum was totally difficult, very hard for me to really control it. It's going to be exciting how the taste result will be. So this is what I got as a result from just measuring the color. L stands for low, M for medium, H for high, D stands for drum, and A for airflow. So we have low drum, low airflow, low drum, medium airflow, high drum speeds, and that's high drum, high airflow should be the third one. And this is the color spectre of this experiment. Exactly the same profile, or almost exactly. As I mentioned, this is the best I could do. The same profile, the same roast length, the same crack, almost temperature, different development times in order to keep in track and follow the same profile. This is huge for those. This is measured on color red you used to have before. You are familiar to that. I have the colors numbers from Tonino as well, but I'm used to use a color red. So, and for those who use color red at work, you might know that 15 degrees in color, it's a huge difference. It's enormous. So just one thought, just modifying the drum speed and the airflow on a geese, and this is the color. And I'm going to see the taste later on, and I think we're going to see huge differentiations there as well, which might be very important and helpful for all of us. The weight loss, this is why, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I don't consider weight loss percentage as a quality control attribute or value, because exactly the same coffee, doing some modifications and how we apply the heat during certain stages on the roast profile, especially on the drying phase, is giving us this range of weight loss, which again, this is 3 kilos of coffees and huge variation, I think, in the weight loss. This is how the modulation of the drum and the airflow affected the time the coffee was reaching the first crack. It was happening at almost exactly the same temperature, but the time was totally different. I think this is the last one. Yeah, in order to of course follow the same roast profile, and given the fact that the first crack was happening almost at the same time for all the roasts, the development time is also very different. So at the end of the day, when we accumulate all this data and see, for the same profile, what happened with development time, when first crack happens, and how the weight loss, the color development of the coffee, this will be totally correlated to the final taste we're going to get today. And I'm going to really enjoy to sit down and see and combine all these things together. And as Jack said earlier today, this is very different from coffee to coffee, and I totally agree about that. I just use the Kenya because it's, I think it's easy to get a very nice taste on a Kenya, and it's very easy to really see that it tastes totally different if you do something else with that coffee. But if this one was a Brazil or Rwanda or whatever, I don't know if we're going to have the same results. But I'm really going to enjoy the final results of these experiments and see how does it taste, and combining all these technical values as well. So just going back here, I was very nervous about this today, and This is not what normally I do in the day life. I usually stay behind the roaster or in front of the roaster and do a lot of batches. But I really hope that this was kind of helpful for some of you. And I hope also as well the results of the experiment that we'll perform right now is going to be helpful for me as well on my way to Taiwan. So thank you very much.